Hello, Chummanly Warner. It's Jules of Drawing, Planning and Publishing fame. You joined me for the Plan With Me video last week, didn't you? So you know for sure what the theme is, right? Yes, it's Blue Tits. Now don't be rude. I love all of the tit family, but particularly long-tailed tits. They are so cute, and little fluffy things, long tails, little beaks. Oh my god, I love them. But looking back in my nature journal from last year, I see it's Blue Tits that were making quite an appearance in February. And this year, they are still coming to my garden in sort of smallish herds, but some of them are even checking out my tit box that I've got on the house, so I'm very excited that we might have some babies this year. I'll keep you posted. Anyway, let me show you how I draw these delightful little birds. This is the title page for February, and there's the little blue tit that I did for it. I'll run through doing a quick simple one like this, and I'm also going to show you how to draw one that's a bit more detailed. So for that, I've got just a printout of a blue tit to remind me, just as a little bit of visual research to remind me what they look like. Although I have to say, when I was looking on screen, it was much more colourful than it's printed out on my slightly old printer. So I'll be using a little bit of my judgment for the colours for that. A quick run through of what it is that we'll be using. This is watercolour paper. It's Arches Aquarelle, quite thick, rough watercolour paper. And there's a little tip: when you get a big sheet of watercolour paper, there will be, probably down in the corner, a watermark that says what the name of the paper is. Before you cut any bits off of it, make sure it's the right way up so that you can read it correctly, and go round and on each corner make a little mark. I do a little tick on each corner to remind me which is the right way up, because believe it or not, watercolour paper does have a right way up and a wrong way up. So that's the right way up. The other things that I'm going to be using are some Caran d'Ache classic colour water soluble pencils, and these are Rexall, Cumberland, Derwent ones as well. So I've got a few different ones. I've got a variety of blues, as you can see here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different blues, 2 different yellows, and a black. And I've also got, well, there's the sort of purpley one in amongst the blues. I've got a Staedtler Mars Lumograph 8B pencil, Staedtler Pigment liner 0.3, and my Staedtler Mars Micro 0.5mm mechanical pencil. I've got 3 watercolour brushes, a piece of kitchen paper, and a jar of water. And that is all we're going to need. So let's crack on with the first one. I'm just going to use my mechanical pencil just to remind me of what the blue tit is going to look like. So he's got quite a sort of, I'm going from my bullet journal this time, not from this little picture, but they've got quite kind of egg-shaped bodies. Well, that's what they are in my mind anyway. Maybe it's a little bit yeah, not massively accurate, but lots of fun, I think. And then on top of that, well, not on top of that, down the back of that, you've got a little tail like this. And their tails have a kind of upside down C shape at the end. And then little beak and an eye. And his little skinny little legs, there he is. He's going to hold onto a branch like this. Okay, so now I've done the rough drawing, I'm going to go back with my pigment liner. This is the 0.3, and I'm going to start outlining it. It's not as easy outlining it on the rough watercolour paper as it is on smooth watercolour paper, or smooth any other paper actually. come to talk of it. And particularly it's got quite a different feel than when you're working in a notebook like a bullet journal. It uses up quite a bit more ink. So go slowly. When you come to the tail, add it to the body, like that. His little skinny little legs grasping onto the branch behind his tail, like that. And then I'm going to go in and rub out the lines. The thing about watercolour paper is it's got quite often it's got some cotton in it, or the texture is made by thicker pulp from the wood. So you have to be quite careful when you're rubbing out lines. Do it as minimally as possible, because you can damage the structure of the paper. Okay, now the thing about Blue Tits is the black is what makes it stand out more. It's the most tittish bit about it. So I'm just going to do, first of all, I'm going to do his little beak, leave a little bit of white to show that it's got a bit of shine to it. And then what he has is he has this dark band that goes from his beak to his eye, and then from the other side it's as if it goes through the middle or round the back of, so don't draw across his eyeball, and then it swoops up to the top of his head, and then it also swoops round like that, because he has this little band underneath his chin as well, there. And then we're just going to join that like that. So all of this area here is black. And then the other black areas are going to be in his tail, just showing off where the feathers are, and a little bit on his wing as well to show us where his wing is. I have sharpened all of my pencils before I started. Don't start with blunt pencils, that's quite important. Next job is to put some of the blue on. So he has this really light blue, a little sort of crown across the top of his head like this, and there's a bit of white that is at the front here, at the front of his head, and also between the black and the white there's a bit of white as well. So we're going to leave that so that the colour of the paper shows through. And this paper is quite a white watercolour paper. You can get ones that are cream, of course. And then I'm going to start working into his wings and his tail. So this part here is going to be yellow, and a little bit on his back as well. I'm going to grab more of a royal blue, just put a little bit of detail. I might actually just put a tiny little bit of detail on the top of his head up there as well. And I'm going to go in with a little bit of purple as well. Not much, you don't need very much at all. Where's my dark blue gone? There it is. So underneath his body here, very sparsely, just a little bit of the dark. I'm going to go back with my royal blue and give him an iris. Now in reality they have quite black eyes, but this is a little character, so I want him to have very characterful eyes. Okay, now I'm going to get some yellow and then we're going to do a bit of watercolour. So out of these two yellows, interestingly, this is the one I'm going to be using. This one looks like the lighter one. It is the lighter one, but this one just has a bit more, that slightly orangier one, just feels a bit more blue tit to me. It's just more colourful. And then you're in absolutely no illusion as to what kind of bird this is. And then a bit down the back as well, because if you look at a blue tit from behind, he has actually got between his wings quite a bit of that yellow. Okay, now let's see what happens when you're doing something like this. When you're doing some sort of artwork, you never quite know what's going to happen on the paper until you actually do it. So let's have a look. I'm just going to wet my brush. Let's start with the top of his head. I'm just very lightly doing some flicks backwards and forwards. Wash my brush. I'm going to go in with the yellow now, because the yellow, obviously being the lighter colour, if you started trying to merge that black in, I'm going very carefully around that wing area, then it would just blur. And also because you've got blue here, if you mix too much you'll end up with green. Keep washing your brush. I'm going to go down the back. See, I don't want to get any green, so wash the brush again. And then wash the brush so I haven't got any yellow on it, and go in where the blue is, and let's see what happens. Not so worried about the black and the blue. I don't mind them merging. Now just where the black is on his beak, the watercolour paper soaks up a lot of this, a lot of the water, and will retain it to carry the pigment a bit further. So actually as you're drying the paint, as it's drying, it will start to merge a bit and do its own thing. It will look a bit different from how when you first put the water on. Going back into his iris. So you might remember at the beginning when we were drawing with the pigment liner that the black pupil is actually in the pigment liner, so that shouldn't be water soluble, but the black pencil is. Now I am going to do something that if you're classically trained, or if you're at school learning how to do art, they will probably tell you don't do that, don't do it, but I'm going to say do it. Here's my water pot. I'm going to get my pale water soluble pencil and I'm going to dip it in to the water, so it already starts to melt the pigment a bit, and then I'm going to go in, and it really does just give you a very big old shot of colour. It probably, I'm going to say, it probably works better in a warm environment in the summer, because it's very cold here at the moment in the studio. I'm going to try a different pencil. I'm going to try, yeah, I'm going to try this one just to put a little bit of detail. So this is the royal blue. Yeah, because I think it's has a bit of a problem, kind of it's a bit more solid at the moment, the pigment. However, I quite like that. I'm going to also do his eye, because I want his iris to really stand out. Cool. Okay, so Just going to grab a brown and give this base a little bit of colour. I'm not really that, it's just for, he needs something to stand on really, to tell us a bit about him. And I'm going to go in with a slightly bigger brush. This is a number 4. There. You might want a slightly more realistic version of a blue tit or a bird, so I'm going to quickly show you how I would go about doing this. I'm going to use my soft pencil. This is the 8B I've got here, and very lightly, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, I hope you can, but very lightly I'm just going to look at the outlines, and this is how I would go about doing it. This is my thinking process. I'm thinking, what shape is his head? I'm not worrying about the beak or where the eye is. I'm thinking, what shape is his head? And in my head, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's kind of like a slightly side-on squashed circle. And then his body, this part, the main part, is a bit of an egg shape. And then his tail, his back, how does his back go? What sort of angle would it go at? If that was 90 degrees, then that goes down at not quite 45, but something like it. So that's the process that my brain is going through as I'm drawing this. So here's my slightly squashed circle for his head, and then his egg-shaped body, his back, so his head comes around like this, there's a little kind of dip where the back of his neck is, and then straight down, and his wing, here's his shoulder, comes down like this, and his wing really disappears over his back, and this bit that you've got left here is his tail. And then on the front, conversely, you've got here you've got the neck, you've got no neck around the front, so his beak's going to be about here, and the body just comes down and meets with that little sort of rump part there. Bird legs go from a fairly rear facing position forwards towards the beak, so they're like that. You have 3 toes at the front and then 1 at the back to hold on, like so. Okay, and there's the, let's say that's the branch. Okay, so his beak, quite a small pointy beak because these birds are seed eaters. So he's got quite a pointy beak. There's his eye. Now, if I can find a rubber, found it. For my American friends, this is an eraser. It's my favourite one, so I always try and use this one. I don't know if you do this, but you know, you find a favourite rubber, don't you? Eraser, excuse me. I'm just going to very, very carefully rub out any of the lines that I don't need, although I could probably cover this up. But again, like I said before, you don't want to ruin the paper. Dry brush, get rid of those little bits of eraser. Okay, right, as we did before, I'm going to go in with my black to start with. Black beak. And this time I am going to give him, he's got quite a large black pupil and then a ring of brown. And I'm going to make sure that I leave just a little bit in the middle that's kind of white to show the glimmer of his eye. And I'm going to find a different brown to edge it with, like that. Go back with the black, and I'm just going to kind of, instead of it being a straight line, I'm jiggling it backwards and forwards to make a texture. The texture of the feathers. You might need to sharpen your pencil as you're doing this. I think I might need to in a minute. And then up the back of his head like we did before, and then it comes round because he's got, you can see it quite clearly on this picture, this little stripe underneath his beak. So let's give him that little stripe, and then it curves round like so and up to the back of his neck. And if you go in the direction that the feathers are going, that will help you to get the right texture. If that makes sense. So down the back of his neck here, they're obviously not going to be standing out like that, so I'm not going to be drawing them like that. I'm drawing them down the back of his neck. The pale blue, leave this area white, still a little bit damp from when I was doing the previous picture, but that's okay. Keep looking back, every couple of seconds, keep looking back at your picture, at your reference drawing or photograph, to make sure that you are in the right place. Then we're going to do a little bit on his tail, because that's quite bright, and then again. Now this one I'm going to just use my, I think I'm going to use black. He has, where his feathers have all come together and disappear over his back, you can draw those lines to show where the wing is sitting, like that. This is purple. I'm going to go in with the royal blue, and then we're going to need to put some yellow up here as well, because like I said before, there's a bit of a sort of yellowy flush. By the way, you might just notice that in these unscripted tutorials, they're a bit different to the ones that I actually script. It's a bit of a stream of consciousness, so sometimes I talk total rubbish. You never know what you're going to get, but hopefully it's slightly helpful rubbish. Sometimes I listen back and I think, good God, what was I talking about? That's okay, isn't it? Don't we all have days like that? There's a little bit of white that goes across here, so I need to remember to add that in. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was, if you are keen on making some pictures for a picture book, or if you've written something that you want to make into a picture book, then check out the course that I've made, because I think it will be really helpful for a lot of people. It's called Illustrating a Children's Picture Book, but it's not all about the illustration part. It's quite a lot about the technical side of things, and how you go about making layouts, how you go about uploading things to KDP and Amazon, etc. So have a look. You can get the preview and a few of the other bits right at the beginning are free anyway, so you can just have a look and see if you think it might be for you. And the other good thing about it is that I do give a 14-day back money guarantee. If you buy it and then you think, do you know what, I don't think this is really what I was looking for, then so long as you can show me that you have actually watched it, you've actually tried to put some of the things into place, if you really feel like, well, that was a bit of a waste of my money, I don't want you to feel that, so I would rather you had your money back and go and find somebody who can help you, rather than use it on something that you don't really think is going to help you. So I don't think I can say fairer than that, can I? Fairer than that? Now, back to my little blue tip. I'm going to start in a moment. I'm going to whip out my brushes and see what happens. So like I said before, you never know. You just don't know what's going to happen. So he's got kind of greyish legs. I don't really want to use grey. I'm going to use the brown actually. Like this. And I'm also, if you have a look on the photo close up, you'll see that this area down here is really fluffy. It's got a lot of little fluffy feathers going on, so they are going to go beyond the line I'd made. Okay, so just want to make sure that he's very colourful down there because he's a cutie. Now I'm going to get some, move my pencils out of the way a little bit. Okay, so I've got my kitchen paper for dabbing my brush on. I've got my number 4 brush. Actually, I wonder if I might use, let's see what this one, this one belonged to my dad. I think it's actually a sable brush, which is not nice because it comes from squirrels' tails, and I'm a vegetarian, so I don't know. Whereas this one is, I think, a Pro Art. Oh no, I beg your pardon, this one is a sable as well. Sable Esther. Dear me. Right, well, I inherited it, and thank you, squirrel, for giving up your tail because you've done a good 25 years worth of service. Okay, I'm going to use this one. It's just got water on it, and I'm going to start with the yellow. Because it's watercolour paper, you can actually put quite a lot of water onto the paper and it won't buckle. That's why we use watercolour paper. Make sure you leave some white areas that you haven't put water on because it gives it a lovely texture. And then I'm just going to flick down where these little fluffy feathers are coming off of his bottom, nearly. Just flick on the edge there. Okay, I'm going to do the back, this bit area where it's yellow as well, because as I said before, I don't want to mix it too much with the blue because otherwise I'm just going to make green. Now onto the blue, making sure that you have washed your brush thoroughly, and I don't mind the black and the blue mixing. Go in the direction that the wings are going and the feathers are going. So as I said before, it goes over the back, so I'm going to mimic that with my brush. And then the tail feathers, they're going straight down that way. There's no going over the edge. So they are just going to go in that direction. Plenty of water on his little rump. Okay, now, top of his head. I'll just bring that pigment down a little bit towards his beak. Because you can see the pencil mark underneath, I might go over that in a minute with that darker colour. I'm going to swap brushes a minute to my thin one again and do his eye. So first of all I'm going to do the iris, which is the brown bit, and then work my way in towards, ooh, that was a seagull that just flew over then. It was a herring gull. We got a lot of herring gulls in Newport at the moment. Working my way into that black pupil area. Leave a little bit in the middle that's white. Okay, swap back brushes again. I was going to use my thin one, but I've decided not to. You make all these decisions as you go along. You just feel your way, really, with a lot of artistic things. Comes with the experience a bit as well, but sometimes you just throw caution to the wind and see what happens. And this is the black. Again, I'm sort of dabbing it a little bit because I want to make that texture of the feathers show through. And remember, the feathers go down at the back of the neck. So that's the direction I'm going in. Don't want to go too far into that yellow because we don't want to mess it up. And also, as an artist, you need to know when to stop. That's really important. It's one of the most important things about creating something artistic is knowing when to stop. Now, I am just going to, having said that, one last thing, going to go back in with this royal blue, wet it in the jar, and then I'm just going to draw across the sort of where I'm a bit, I don't really want to see that pencil mark, so just going to dab very, very subtly, and then I'm going to use my very tiny brush again. This one is, I don't know what number it is actually, it's probably a 1, and then just drop some water onto that and let the water go where it wants to go, let it do its own thing. Now, where did I put that brown? This brown. I'm just going to also give a little bit of something for it to stand on, like so. Back in with the big brush, really wet this time. Like that. And also his leg. And that, I would say, is finished. Do you like your garden birds? If you live anywhere other than the UK, what sort of things do you have lurking around your garden or where you live? I would love to know. When you've done your version of February 2020 in your bullet journal, then take a photo, stick it on Instagram, tag me, because I would love to see whatever it is. It doesn't have to be blue tits, it doesn't have to be bird related at all, it can be anything. I would just really enjoy seeing what you've made. Next week we will be looking at how to write a children's picture book. You know I'm crazy about that kind of thing. So join me then, make sure you subscribe, ding the bell, do all that kind of stuff so that you definitely catch up with me. Paint me in PVA glue, roll me in feathers. I'm off to see what's lurking in my garden. I'll see you next time. Nanu nanu!